Hey, welcome everyone to the Yankees Farm Report. I'm Mark from the Bronx Muchachos, filling in for Carlos as hosting today. Tonight's panel, we got Bobby Millone and we got Aaron. I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'm not going to even attempt it, my friend.
All good.
So, guys, first off, how you guys been doing today?
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm good. I bought a $5 ALCS Champions sweatshirt. So that was, a
Five
good
bucks.
deal. $5, yeah, very
That's
very
great. Go
prized
for it.
possession here in New York. Yeah, I like sweatshirts. So it was a good purchase in my mind. It's commemorate a fun season. It was the first real good season in my, 3 years in New York. So
There you go. All right, before we begin tonight, I just want to give big thanks out to all the channel members for their contribution to keep the lights on, sharing content, and all the subscribers for returning and engaging with us. So right now, guys, let's get into it. Sunday night, yesterday, we had the draft going on, and if you listen to Twitter, you go all over Yankee Twitter along the way. The Yankees are making moves right now to replace Anthony Volpe, which as we were getting on here today, we all agreed that's not the case. So let's pour some cold water on that right now. These are picks for the future. We'll go first and foremost. Dax Kilby, shortstop out of Georgia, high school shortstop out of Georgia. He's a left-handed bat, so his comps are kind of more along the lines of he's got really good contact as a prep kid, but his arm isn't there, and most likely move into the outfield, second base. Guys, what are your thoughts on this first round pick?
yeah, I just want to start off by saying something because you made the point of they're replacing Volpe. Of the first 39 picks, which goes up to the pick of Kilby, 18 of them were announced as shortstops. Like, I think it's just important to make sure everyone's aware that, a lot of these guys are playing shortstop because especially high schoolers, that's the most valuable position. If you're an athletic guy, you're going to be the shortstop on your team in high school. And then it's decently similar for college as well. So, even though these guys are being announced as shortstops, that's not, at the MLB level, that's not where they're likeliest to fit. And I think that falls in line with Dax Kilby, who, he was not to say George Lombard wasn't a bat pick, because he had a good looking bat when he was in high school when we drafted him in 2023, but his defense at shortstop was a lot stronger, whereas Dax Kilby is definitely a much more hit tool oriented guy who makes a lot of good contact, is really good at waiting for his pitch and not chasing out of the zone. So his hit tool is probably the best they've drafted in a few years. And, but the defense is just, it's going to be interesting to see if they can make him work out short because it seems like he's probably more of a third baseman, maybe even a second baseman, but he's a very exciting hitter to watch. And, the Yankees have done a good job of developing power with guys. You look at Brendan Jones a little bit. Dylan Lewis, I think, is a guy this year has shown more pop. I mean, it's not the same example, but they've helped Spencer Jones tap into his in-game power. So I think there's a real good mix there of, being able to take guys who have good hitterish tools and being able to help them find that game power. So, no, it's an exciting pick. And I'm excited to see him get started.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, that was a name that was coming on. There was some rumors that he was going into the first round, maybe Thursday and Friday, Sunday morning. Kylie from ESPN um, had him mocked to the Yankees. So you kind of trust him. Kylie worked in the Yankees minor league. He was a scout years ago, so he might still have connections. Probably does. But I can't say I've seen firsthand knowledge of what he could be. I kind of knew more of Lumbar, and I saw Volpe play because he is from New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey, but I saw Lumbar because he was a consensus top 10 pick that spring and that prior winter. So he was a name that kind of fell, and when he was there, you knew he had the size. He's 6'2", 6'3". Dax, I mean, the South is notorious. When I mean the South, he's conference one of high schools. You know what I mean? The Alabamas, the Mississippis, Louisianas, and Georgias, North Carolinas, they put out shortstops every year. I remember the year that Volpe was picked. there was a shortstop that I liked better, and that was Gunnar Henderson. And they didn't pick Gunnar; they went with the local kid. And I remember, well, that's they picked Volpe the day that I saw him hit a home run in the state playoff game, and I'm like, okay, I can live with this, right? So it was something that I thought that they made it right, and he's still like I said, I don't want to talk about him, but if Dax is the lefty version of what Anthony has become, that's a win, right? I mean, you're getting a 3-win player. We may not see that though for 3, 4, 5 years. So I think
Yeah.
everybody needs to be patient. This year he's not going to play. I would be surprised if he gets into any kind of game, but come next year, I would think that they would, if he's healthy, they start him in Tampa as a 19-year-old, and then just see what he could do.
You're going to say that he's going to bypass the complex league, just go straight to low A?
It's t I mean, FCL ends next week, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
right? It's they moved that up. I think it was
and it
last
starts
season was
in
the
May 1st, so next year it would be a
yeah
month. I mean, could they
yeah.
hold him back? But I don't know. I mean, if
I
he
th
something
I think it'll definitely be what they see, and he'll definitely be down in Florida
instructions.
going through instructions, and they'll have spring training next year, so they're gonna get a chance to gauge where he's ready for. I think that's something we saw with Carlos Legrand getting surprising promotion to Hudson Valley to start the year, Dylan Hasso starting the season in Somerset. So I think that will definitely be something they'll look at is where do they see him? Because if he does start in Tampa, that's what you'd expect. But if
Yeah.
he is starting in FCL, that's I don't want to say it's a red flag, but it's a bit of a yellow flag that okay, maybe he's not where they want him to be. So I think what Bobby said is pretty accurate that he should be in Tampa to start next season.
And I think he plays shortstop. I mean, he makes
Oh
40
yeah.
hours. I mean, they have time to figure it out to move him off there. I mean, I don't see anything moving him off, especially Oppenheimer talking about him today. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
All right. So let's go. Speaking of shortstops, let's go to our number 2 pick in the third round, which is a legacy pick, Caden Kent, Mr. Jeff Kent's son, shortstop. He's from Texas A&M. He's a fourth year junior. Another 6'2". Well, Dax Kirby 6'2", 190 pounds. Jeff Kent's son is 6'2", 200 pounds. Um, he's another one who's played shortstop, but is another one kind of projected to move to the other side of the diamond, be a second baseman. So, let's we were talking about before, not every single Aaron, you said it, not every shortstop is going to be sticking at shortstop. So with shortstops are just like international draft. You want to take your shortstops, you want to take your outfielders, and maybe some catchers along the way, and then kind of move around there. Pick get the most athletic kind of guy, and I think this kind of fits in the mold of what they were trying to. Me personally, in the first 2 rounds, I was surprised the Yankees didn't go for like a college, with the first round pick, a more polished college bat. I was surprised they
Mhm.
didn't go down that road. Maybe even like a college outfielder, but infield is where they kind of need to bulk up some.
Let me, I will say this before we even go further. And I hate this phrase, they put their eggs in one basket. And when they drafted Dax, um, it kind of set it off in my mind that they're gonna they're gonna pick some reaches. Like, no offense to Kent, because I watched Kent a lot on the SEC network, okay? And he's played 2 years on the Cape. He's a capable kid, and I think he's probably gonna make the major leagues, right? I was gonna do I do my write-ups for the draft, and I put out there. I had him as a 5th round pick. They got him in the 4th round, which is
Third.
about right. The 3rd round, excuse me, my bad. 3rd round. So they moved. Like I said, I had him as a 5th round. They get him in the 3rd round, and what they're doing is going to save some money to pay Killaby. Okay, not saying that he's not worth a 3rd round pick, but you could see that knowing how they pick, right? So you're calling up their agents, you're going to see if they're signable and at what number. Off the top of my head, I think that number for the 3rd round is like 700,000. What's
744.
Yeah,
seven?
744.
Okay,
744,000.
so they could have said, would you take, let's say, 550? or 600 and save 150,000 to put elsewhere if we draft you then. Now he's coming from a family, and let's be honest too, he's coming from a family of money, right? So money is not an issue with him. $150,000, is not going to be the end all to be all. He's in a good organization, and he's going to be developed correctly with the Yankees compared to maybe other ones. Um, but he is a solid pick. I've watched a lot of him. I mean, could he play? He could play first, he could play second, he could play third, and he could play shortstop. You could put him on any of those positions. I don't think he's going to embarrass himself. It's the bat. And if the bat comes to full maturity, he could be a 20 home run hitter. Right now, I don't really see that. Right now, I see more of 10 to 15, around 15. But I think he could be a really great, if everything comes together, utility type of player on the major league level, which is hard to find.
Yeah, and I think we can maybe later, after we've talked about a lot of the picks, maybe get into kind of discourse about the draft direction because I think you got into it a bit of, Kilby was clearly, the main plan in this draft. But just focusing on Kent, he kind of reminds me some of Rock Riggio out of college.
Yeah.
I think Riggio has a little bit more pop and a little bit stronger offensive profile than Kent does and Kent has a little bit more of a defensive value, whereas Riggio's been a second baseman or a shortstop, or excuse me, Riggio's been a second baseman, but I think Kent, he definitely has, although a little bit less offense, I think there's definitely that pull side power that Riggio mainly has. Not that Riggio can't pop one opposite, he's done that a couple times this year, but he definitely has a really good pull side power for his size, and he has really good plate discipline for, in college in the SEC, which is, the best conference and college it's probably the equivalent I would say at least the equivalent of FCL maybe more Tampa so he
SEC,
A
yeah.
minus yeah so he's done well with good competition so he's a guy I can see him being a utility I believe he's had experience in the outfield I think he has a good enough arm to be more of a third baseman I don't think shortstop is really in the realm of possibility with him, but yeah, he's a guy who offers you real utility, possibility, and that could be something, where I mean, Oswaldo Cabrera, we've seen with him that he's even without being the best offensive player since that, Fun 22 summer, he still provided value being able to play so many positions for the team, and I think that could be something Kent does that, really thinking about the organization right now and our position players, it's something they lack right now. It's a lot of obviously George Lombard's a shortstop, Spencer Jones is an outfielder, but then it's a lot of guys who just, maybe aren't the greatest movers around the field. So I think he's a guy who can provide you decent defense at multiple positions.
That's true. You're right about that one. Um, Going to the third pick now for the Yankees. I think this one might have been the biggest steal that they had in Pico Cone, Mississippi State pitcher, 4-year senior. He's already had Tommy John surgery. He pitched well in the College World Series before. He missed all of 2023, so he's coming back. Yeah, his stuff hasn't come back fully but Yankees system now, especially with the pitchers, you get somebody in there and they can work magic with them. So I expect and I'm looking towards a lot of interesting things from this one. And I think Pico's going to be as a fast mover. And where I said before, I thought they were going to look for more college bats to move fast through the system. This guy right here is another one of those guys I think is going to be moving through the system pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, all spring I tweeted like if the Yankees are gonna do a senior signing, I would think it would be Cone. I mean, they like Mississippi State now, mind you, Mississippi State fired their head coach during the season. So, but I think it's the program itself, the way they develop, is something that the Yankees have liked for over 10 years.
Cade
Uh,
Smith is a Bulldog alum.
yeah, exactly. So they're there scouting them. I watched a lot of his games this year, and I had a sense from April that they would be interested in him. He's tall, had Tommy John's surgery, and he would come off as a cheaper signing being a senior. So being in the fourth round, I still think he's not going to get 100% of that bonus, but he might be getting 60% of that bonus or 70% of that bonus. Um, he's going to be going into there, and I think we just discussed it just now, their development. He should start the year, I would think, at high A, and he can move fast because he's going to be 23 next year. I think the only real issue is the changeup. If he gets the changeup over, he's got the slider, he's got the fastball, and the fastball too, which from what I remember, he was throwing like 92 to 94, touching maybe 96.
Yeah.
He's got the
Mhm.
body where he could probably maybe add a couple more miles, but watching him, I remember, I think it was against maybe Vanderbilt. It was just two pitches. He's got to get that third pitch, which I think they will develop with their
Hmm.
developmental stat, and he'll have the three pitches. But if you're asking me, if there's a comp, I mean, what Brock Selvage is now, sort of kind of built wise, maybe a little short, a little taller, but he can move pretty quickly and remember, if health is there, because he is still coming off Tommy John, and I think he pitched 80 innings this year or
I
88,
think it's
something like that. So you got to see how the arm bounces back because they're
yeah, 80
still,
innings.
yeah, they're still young. And I think the command fastball, from what I remember, he didn't walk a lot this year. The fastball command was pretty much good.
Yeah, he had
And
an
it's
8.3
exciting.
walk percentage.
It's an exciting pick because usually they don't pick lefties that often. And getting a tall, projectable lefty like that. I mean, the last one off the top of my head that I think that they drafted before the fifth round, that was college, not JUCO. I think Carr was JUCO, I
Carlos
believe.
Juco, yeah.
Well,
And Selvage was high
maybe
school.
I'm wrong or something, but it could be in Montgomery, back in 2014 or 2013. That could have
TJ
been.
Sycamore.
Yes,
TJ
Sycamore.
Sycamore
So
in
yeah, you know what?
2019.
He never played, right? So that's how much I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, that's a great one. Good job there, Aaron. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
shows like, and he didn't play. So if it's something that's rare. So if they, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but there was so much when you watched him play this year, it screamed that he was going to get picked by the Yankees.
yeah, I think you kind of hit on it is even with the Yankees being a very good pitching development organization. There has been a kind of lefty hole in the organization, and now I'm just looking off the list. It's Henry Lalane. I know he's been injured, but he's still highly valuable. Griffin Herring's been great. Brock Selvage, although it's been a little bit shaky coming back from that shoulder injury, he's still upside lefty. Ben Shields has been very interesting. Kyle Carr is there. Xavier Rivas is a guy who has some pretty nasty stuff. And now you add Pico Cone to it, and
Y-
you have
y-
a nice little stock of lefties. Even though none of them I would say are high potential, they're still guys who can be either back end starters or really good relievers.
And Aaron, you're going to remember this. You named all those names. How many of those names are still in the system August the 1st? Because if you remember, they had some lefties, if you remember, 2 years ago or well, 3 years ago, right? And then it was gone like that when they made the
Yeah.
Montas, right? And other trades like that. And then the Bennett, they just blew them away. So it's
Yeah, I'll say that I feel Lalane just with the injury, he'll likely be staying. I think Selvage, the same thing of him just not needing to build up that draft stock again. But Griffin Herring seems like a prime candidate, a six rounder who's turned into a really good pitcher. That if you want to flip that for some help, that makes a lot of sense. Ben Shields is a guy who, if a team really wants a guy who can be a reliever as soon as next year, he's someone that could be of interest and as an add-on to a trade. So yeah, you're right. We'll see how long it lasts, but I would assume Selvage Lalane will still be there with Pico Cone.
and
And
I'll
those
tell
will
you, we talked about it last week, which is Xavier Vivas, uh,
mhm.
um, who's at, I guess, low A. Um,
Yeah.
he's putting it still together. He's coming off Tommy surgery last year,
Yeah. Mhm.
but he is 6'4". Actually, I got I got a DM from somebody on the Yankees farm. They said he has the nastiest changeup in the farm. So,
Mhm.
if you watch that game that he got the 13 strikeouts or whatever, or not the 13 strikeouts, the game against the Pittsburgh minor league team, that changeup is deadly. The thing is
Yeah.
fastball control. So just give it some
Mhm.
time. But they do have lefties.
Yeah,
It's a nice
I
thing
just
to
think
have.
the one last thing I wanted to say with Pico Cone is even being a senior sign, that can still be a very good pitcher. It's worked out weirdly with Brendan Beck, but because he's had so many weird injuries since being drafted. But that was a senior
Mhm.
sign that has turned into a good pitcher in the minor leagues. That's someone he has a chance to be a solid fifth, maybe fourth starter of the pros, and he could very well be a trade bait. So I think Pico Cone with that fastball slider combo and being able to control both the pitches really well,
Yeah.
he's easily going to be a good reliever in the MLB. But it's just the development of that changeup, like Bobby mentioned, maybe a fourth pitch, maybe like a fastball variation, like a sinker or a cutter that could take him to that next level of being fourth or even third starter. But it's a very interesting an exciting pick, given it was, likely an underslot deal.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, with in the fifth round, Yankees turned around. They picked a kid, Cord Jackson, another shortstop from Utah. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. He's another left-handed bat. The value for him and that pick is just a little over $400,000, 411. Um, you know, he's. I mean, Utah is kind of a little bit far from the East Coast for me, so I don't really watch many of those. I don't really watch many of those games in college. Maybe I'll catch a Long Beach State in Long Beach. I'll go watch one of those games once in a while but but by that time I'll probably be putting my feet up and getting ready to go to sleep when those things are going. But he looks like they said he was a top collegiate shortstop, very athletic. He's got a chance to stick at shortstop, but anything's happened. He's got an average arm, good actions, solid runner, so good bat to ball skills. Not really type of guy that's going to get the ball over the fence, but more possibly gap to gap kind of guy. So with this kind of guy, it seems like they're just like you said, they're kind of doing a lot of reaching, but I think they're trying to fill in spots right now and then kind of see where everyone's gonna kind of go
And this is a good
and
thing
just
to
get the most
say.
athletic guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something I think is a good thing to say as, we're going to go deeper into this draft. You know, we talk about, wanting upside guys, and the thing with basically once you get to the fifth round and beyond is, a lot of these guys are guys who don't project to be MLB players. That's the whole point of any draft is the guys in the later rounds are guys you're saying, oh, maybe there's like one or two things that are interesting, but the rest of it is not nearly pro potential. And our job is to make those things good enough to get that pro potential. And we talk about the Yankees with pitchers. Cam Schlittler was throwing 90 miles per hour. That's been well documented. Will Warren was a senior sign that, had some nasty stuff but no control, and that developed into becoming a starting pitcher. So I think it's, important to point out right now as we talk about these guys is that right now these aren't guys who look like MLB players, but the Yankees have improved their hitting development over the course of this year since Jared DeHart came in as the hitting coordinator, and we've seen positive signs. So there are things that you could say, oh yeah, like they knew they needed to really bulk up their hitting because last year they did it with the pitching, picking seven straight pitchers. This year they noticed they needed to do it with the hitting. They went ahead and did it. Props to Damon Oppenheimer and Brian Cashman for that. But Core Jackson, he's a little different than Caden Kent and Dax Kilby. He's not as good with his plate discipline. He swings and misses a bit more. He doesn't hit the ball as hard, but he still was able to create some damage. A lot of doubles, 20 stolen bases his last year. He's like you said, he's a good defender. Even if he doesn't stick at short, he's someone I could see going to center field. So it's definitely a good, interesting guy who has a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed, good defense. They'll have to work on cleaning up that plate discipline. But there's even though he's a senior sign, he's not even 22 years old yet, so he's young for the
Yeah, from
class.
Canada.
Yeah. So, it's definitely another interesting pick where it's hard to get overly excited about it. Since it was kind of another signing to probably help pay for Dax
Yeah.
Kilby, but there's something there, and I think there's something that the Yankees could get out of it if they can help clean up that plate discipline.
I can't say that I've watched him play at all, and it was hard to even find scouting reports. So you just go to Baseball Reference, you see what they have, or you go on
Mm.
Twitter to see some stuff. The pick was, and Aaron just alluded to, and I just did some rough math over here. If you take Kent, Cone, and Core Jackson, and you add up what their bonuses are, it's about $1.7 million. Okay. And then if you know, Core Jackson would have should have been somewhere after a top 10 pick. So that's $150,000. I don't see them, I think that pick is 400. I don't see them offering more than, let's say, 175. So the
Mhm.
point is between that and the 5% overture of the draft pool that you could go, you're talking about 700 to $800,000 of savings. I don't think all of it goes to Kilby. I think maybe half of it goes to him because they did select some other players in later rounds
Mhm.
where they could use that money. But that was a stretch pick. But like Aaron said, there must be something there. He's still on the young side because he's, like I said, it's Canadian. So they graduate a little early up there, and so he could come into the system, and if he turns out that in 2 or 3 years he is a third or fourth piece in a trade, you won. So I think that pick was more made for financial reasons than development reasons.
Mhm.
I can see that.
And they still
Sixth
gotta like
round.
the guy. They still gotta like the guy and like
Yeah, they
it. So
have to
it's
like the guy. They have to like
yeah.
Yeah.
it's not like no, it's like what I always said, the scouts are talking to people who are willing to take a certain number, and before the draft there's what they had 19 picks, right? They're talking to 80 to 100 people, kids, and figuring out where their bonuses is. And if Core Jackson would be like, listen, just give me this X amount of number, that's great. We like you to begin with, but you're also hitting our goal of what we want for as a signing. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That compared to the other drafts where you're drafting necessarily the best player at that position, you're not. You're playing like a monopoly, or you're trying to balance your checkbook pretty much.
Well, especially when you're picking late in the later rounds and whatnot. But I mean, when you're picking the top rounds, you can go for best of the best. Um, but you will have your organizations such as Pittsburgh. I think Baltimore does this too, where you kind of cut deals and say, okay, well, we like these four people. Which one's going to cost the cheapest, and we're going to go with that route. But um,
And I'm not
you know,
knocking the Yankees, because I will tell you something, and Aaron, I know, is a good draft watcher too. The past 4 or 5 years since they have done the strategy, it's worked out. They have drafted 19 players this year. Uh, I would be shocked if any of them, I can't even think. Was Keegan the last one, the catcher from Vanderbilt, the last one who hasn't signed? Because I know
Um, they they
there's a
drafted a guy. High school guys haven't signed, but
there's a high school,
those are expected. Those are
yeah.
I think Cole Royer last year. They just draft in case
And
they
they
don't
have
pick a
only
top
drafted,
guy.
if I'm correct, one prep kid, right? One high
In
school.
this class,
Yes.
yeah, they drafted a junior college, but just one high schooler.
Right. And so I mean, we'll talk maybe later about the junior college kid, but I think they're pretty much geared to see what those players they drafted, what they're looking for, and figuring out a way to accommodate them. I know with the next pick, they went, I mean, they wasn't the next pick is Fox, right?
Yeah.
Rory Fox from Notre Dame, pitcher, um, for another fourth year junior, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's got a four pitch mix. I mean, he's got his four seamer, 91, 93. He touches 96. He's got a low 80 slider. He's got the mid 80s changeup. and a upper 70s curveball. So he can kind of pitch for the in an ACC league,
You know,
which ACC is kind of is getting better for college baseball. Um, and he had, especially in the ACC, had an opponent average against was 187. So
It's a very
yeah,
interesting pick because if I'm correct, he comes from a cold. I think he's from Wisconsin, so you really don't know what kind of development he's getting as a teenager and stuff. But Notre Dame, like you just mentioned, there he's pitching against quality teams. I think at 6'3", 200 pounds, he's somebody that they see, and I think you mentioned it, throws a number of pitchers, put him in the lab, and let's see what they can do with him. And I think he's gonna turn out. Cade Smith was a name that you mentioned a few minutes ago. I hope he is healthy. He's coming back right now, right?
yeah,
That kind of a pitcher, that kind of hopefully maybe healthy, hopefully, and you develop into something special. Like I said, when they drafted Cam Schlittler 2 years ago, I was like, okay, great. I didn't nowhere see near how him throwing 100 miles an hour. Now, I'm not saying this kid, Fox is going to be throwing 100 miles an hour, but the way they develop pitchers, he could become a solid prospect, and that's what you really want.
yeah. I think the sixth round's been kind of a money round for the
Yeah.
Yankees in recent years. 2021 was Richard Fitz, so they developed nicely. 22 was Cade Smith, or it was 23 was Cade Smith. Excuse me. Who was 22? I'm blanking on that right now. I know last year was Griffin Herring. But Rory Fox, we've been talking about underslot, underslot, underslot. This is a guy who's definitely not. I wouldn't imagine it's an underslot signing. Maybe if
Oh,
it
it's
is
Chase
a
Hampton. Chase Hampton.
Chase Hampton, yeah. So six rounds has been a very good spot, and you mentioned it that there's he has a nice four pitch mix. I think another thing is he's a pretty good strike thrower right now. He's touched 96. That the Yankees can maybe get that to where he's hitting 96. I don't know about that, but I think there's a really good base of a pitcher, and I can just imagine they're going to get him down to Tampa, get him in the lab, help optimize that pitch mix, and I would not be shocked if he is doing eye-opening stuff next year. It just seems to be the thing. It's definitely a solid arm. I did like the pick. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him, but it's definitely intriguing.
So before we go down the list of some more of these guys, let's kind of with these top five. Do you think any of them will um change the top 30 rankings for the Yankees? Like, you think they're you think
Yeah.
the post draft, assuming everyone signs, do you think all I don't think all of them will move in, but maybe a couple of them will move into
I,
the
I
rankings and kind of push others around.
I think three of them will. I think Kilby is definitely a top 10 pick. I mean, top 10 pick. He's in the
Yeah.
top 10 ranking somewhere, probably between 7 and 10. In my opinion, probably Cone is and Kent is somewhere between 20 and 25. But besides
Yeah,
those two, it's too early on the other ones. And that's even stretching it too, to be honest with you, because the Yankees do have some good talent down there that if they're going to be put into the system, it's going to be higher. It's going to be in the 20th range, 30 range.
yeah. I do my own personal rankings. If anyone wants to go find them, you can just find my Twitter account, X account, at AJ_LICH. But the articles I still believe pinned on my profile. But I do my own personal rankings. And I did spend some time today looking through and updating them. I've been making changes over the last month plus since I published. But I slid Dax Kilby in at 7.
Yeah.
I had him below my number 6, Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, but I have him above my number 8, Ben Hess. Not that Ben Hess has been bad this year. I think he's still, has done a good job, but I wouldn't say he's been very arrow up. And I think, you look at Kilby with a young profile, younger, good hitterish profile. I think he has a good base of a player, whereas Hess, has pretty, I don't want to say severe relief risk, but high relief risk. So I definitely I feel comfortable with that ranking right now. Um, And then with Pico Cone, I had him at 19. I put him right below Brock Selvage. I actually think they're like exactly the same age. Maybe one of them is a month or two older. I can't remember, but I feel like Bobby mentioned that's your comp for him. I think they fit very comfortably together. So I'm pretty, I think Pico Cone, I would not be surprised if you see him in that 15 to 25 range. And then I personally put Caden Kent at 21. I think Bobby said that he should probably be in that, 21 to 30 range. I would give a shout to Rory Fox to maybe make it. I wouldn't bet on it, but I could see Pipeline, Pipeline predominantly, maybe BA, but probably not just Pipeline. I could see them sneaking him in. But yeah, I think those first three picks are what you're looking at when you're talking about top 30 prospects. At least, as of the updating right after the draft. And then, maybe Rory Fox slides in after the trade deadline.
You know what it is? It's if you look at and when the draft is done, or when you're going through the draft, and he mentions pipeline, they have the ranking next to it. Like this year, and I don't want to say I was disappointed on the people they selected, but the number of 250, I believe that's what they were on, was I think only three or four uh, compared to other years. Where was last year, it seemed like, everyone was a top, yeah. So it's just like, I'm not saying that they took some stretches, because I think there's quality there. Like, we don't know how many times they visit the player or have the deep metrics in the players. Um, I think all of them up to this point, up to the sixth pick, has potential of climbing the ladder. And then when you after that the old I don't want to jump ahead because my personal favorite is Gillespie out of because I've watched him pitch, and I think Aaron, I think you feel the same way too. Blake Gillespie, I think if you ask me if there's going to be someone I think who could make, he to me is like another Adam Warren when you see that kind of pitcher. He's got the fastball control. There's been
Nasty slider,
yeah,
nasty slider.
there's some rumors too that he might want more money. So some of that savings could go to him. But to me, I have the old Billy Bean A's mentality when drafting. If you could perform at the college level, okay, especially like in the southern states, you probably could perform in the minor league. Now, whether you have that next gear to go to that next level, which is the major leagues, I don't know. But what most of these picks are, and what people don't realize, are trade chips, right? They're not necessarily for a team like the Yankees that has stars that use the free agent market. They need to make big trades, and these are trade chips. So when I see these names, I don't see them. Oh, I'm projecting him to be the second baseman of the future, or he's a sec. If the right trade comes along, they're gone, and you can't feel that way. Like, let's be honest here. They're so far caught some breaks with both Warren and now Schurtler. Because if those two guys were traded and you saw them pitch like that on another team, sure, we wouldn't be too happy right about now. Especially Cam.
Yeah. No, not at all. Especially, it's like you guys have said, the past few years, there's been a lot of pitchers going out the door.
And
Just
I
look at
bet you there's
Oakland
gonna
every
be
time.
I bet you there's gonna
Oh
be
yeah,
some more come 2 weeks from now.
yeah.
I can agree with that. I agree with that. Um, yeah. So the number seventh round picked Richie Bonamolo Jr. from Alabama, outfielder, fourth year junior, 5'11", 190 pounds. He's got reports are he's got sneaky pop. He also played in community college, Wabash Valley in Illinois community college for a couple of years. He had 62 steals in 2024. So when he transferred to Alabama, he batted 314, 16 swipes. he has solid speed, some sneaky pop, and is capable center fielder. So got a center fielder that could, if all clicks well for him, he could probably a couple years down the line possible trade chip.
Yeah,
But he's one of those speedy. He's a speedy guy, which is always a good thing. So even on the defensive side, he can cover a lot of ground.
I think
Yeah, I'll keep.
a center fielder is something they didn't really. I don't know if they really have true center fielders. He's a true center fielder. He plays in the SEC. He's a local kid. I can't say I've seen him play, but the metric numbers that they provide out there seems that he is a well-rounded player.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be quick on him. I think, yeah, he's a guy who's going to stick in center field, which is always valuable, but, they can move him if they really desire. I only struck out a little bit more than he walked, so it's, pretty good plate discipline. He kind of reminds me of Brendan Jones a good bit, a righty version of
Yes,
Brendan Jones in
excellent.
college. It's so we'll see how they optimize him, but it's another intriguing-ish pick for a guy who is I mean obviously performing at a top college, but it's maybe not the most tools up type of player. But I think it's a good pick, and another hitter that has something, has some tools that could be optimized with the Yankees.
And I mean, his pick value is 252,000 dollars. So I mean, there's some someone like that you can play around with that as well. Um, kind of start packaging some of these guys together. The
Mhm.
number eighth round, ninth round. Eighth round is Mac Hewer from Texas Tech. He's a fourth year sophomore, 6'5", 265 pounds. So he's got bulk with him. And then you got Bobby's guy here, Blake Gillespie from UNC. He's a fourth year junior. So boys, take it away. I mean,
I think
Yeah, I'll
that,
be
go, go
go
ahead.
on.
Go ahead.
Oh, all right. I mean, with Hewer, I think he's your biggest lottery ticket of
Yeah.
upside. He was he was drafted out of high school at 23 by the Guardians at 16. And he just turned 21 as a draft eligible sophomore. Just had trouble putting it together. I think getting him some real pro conditioning, it's kind of similar to Ben Hess, who was, a big, bulky 6'5", kind of getting him leaned out a bit more will help. He's purely he's that guy who just couldn't get it together, couldn't be throwing strikes, but there is some real interesting pro components. Whereas Gillespie, I think he's that slider he is nasty. It was his primary pitch. That's something the Yankees love. His fastball was low 90s, but has been up to 95. So, if you can get him sitting more in the 93, 94 range, then all of a sudden you have a very, very, very interesting pitcher. At a third pitch, you have a potential starter, but I think he kind of like Cone, Gillespie from the right side has a chance to be a, very solid reliever with that fastball slider combo.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Tech is a place that which is funny because there are certain teams that stay away from Texas Tech development, and then there's the Yankees, and they seem to like them.
Chase
Chase,
Hampton.
yeah, yeah, and then they drafted another arm later in the later round from Texas Tech, I believe this draft. So
Yeah, yep, they did
yeah,
Jack
so
yeah,
Seaver.
there's something about Texas Tech.
Jack Siebert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is something they see we do not see. So, but I will. This is my take, my feel on this. Right? It's like last year when they drafted, was it Grayson Carter?
Yeah.
Okay, and I hated the pick. And you could say, well, he throws 100 miles an hour. When you have control issues, and it's gonna you're gonna have to find it, and it doesn't sometimes happen, even if you are able to throw this. Now, I'm not saying this guy is like that because I don't think the walks are that crazy.
No, they're not nearly as bad as
Uh,
Grayson Carr, but it's an upside bet, whereas there's a lot more
exactly.
risk.
So
Whereas some of these
if
other guys have decent floors.
it, it- you know, it, could this be another Chase Hampton? I don't know. We'll wait and see. As for Gillespie, like I just said before, I think if you asked me of this whole entire draft, who works out as a pitcher, I think it's probably him. And like I said, he's got the build. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a junior. I don't think he's a senior pick. And, 19 walks, and I think he pitched over 100 innings or close to
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
100 innings.
100,
Command,
100 in the third.
yeah, command is command. Whether you're in the minor leagues, whether you're in a little league, or whether you're major leagues, he's got that so he's got that already. It's now fine tuning the other pitchers, and I think between him and Fox and Cone, those are three pitchers that you see next year at worst in Tampa starting year. Even though I think Cone probably starts the year at Hudson Valley, I think the other two start the year in Tampa and should get a lot of work in before they move up.
We could go with that. Uh, their ninth and tenth picks on the draft. They picked for in the 10th round. Their number 9 pick is Connor McGinnis out of Houston, Texas. Second baseman, lefty bat. It's a 4-year junior, 6'1", 185 pounds. Then in the 11th round for their 10th pick, they have Ben Garble from Indiana. He's a pitcher, 6'4", 215 pounds. He is a fourth year. Uh, ooh,
He
I
is a
thought when I
fifth
I
year
think he's a
senior.
23-year-old
50, I
senior.
was going to say,
Yeah.
yeah, he's going to be 50-year senior. Yeah, so 6'4", 215 pounds.
Yeah.
So those,
Yeah.
and then those two got you got a couple, another 6'4", another bigger pitcher. I know some colleges are kind of gearing towards that. I know the University of Miami is gearing towards a lot of big pitchers to kind of promote to the big league. So this is
I'll
kind
tell you
of
what
this is what the Yankees are doing too.
with these two picks, and you guys could look it up. When I was watching the draft, it just annoyed the living hell out of me because I think these are what I would call wasted picks, which means that they're fillers. They have the potential, but most likely they're out of the organization maybe in 2 years. So they're drafting this. The Guardians drafted Ryan DeSanto from Penn State and Aaron Salvi from Iowa. Both of them, I had them at my watch list because both of them did very well last year in the keep, and they were available, and the Yankees passed over them, and I was annoyed as hell because I know they like those Cape kids, and when you have Cape kids who performed well there and performed well in college, and they both had good metrics, and the Indians, remember, where did the Yankees pitching department get most of their ideas and stuff? From the Indians, right? Let's be honest here. So the Indians like this. To me, as someone who watches the draft, the Indians, in my opinion, had a fantastic draft. Not just a good draft. Now, they had a few more comp picks. They had a fantastic draft. If you're looking for, and this would be like an A's draft back in the early 2000s, where they got college kids who performed on the college level. Ryan Prager, who was in the second round, they got in the eighth round. Harrison Bordendorf, they got in the 10th round. Jay Slaviette, they got in the 27th pick. Nolan Sherbert from Oklahoma State, they got, I don't know, the 70th summer pick.
Yeah, 101.
Luke Hill was another pick that I had thought going to the Yankees from Ole Miss. These are picks that, and then they got the two picks that I was just talking about, DeSanto and Salvi. So I'm questioning why the Yankees didn't select those guys and picked the kid from Oklahoma, from Houston, and the kid from Indiana. But then again, is this a money thing? Not really with the 11th or 12th round, because that money is there. It
Yeah,
has to be something more that they see that I don't.
I think it's just very good to clarify with people that, the eighth through the 10th rounds, it's not every single pick for every team, but those rounds are generally where teams will take senior signings and
Yeah.
take, they'll pay them, 100,000, 50,000, and save that money to either go to guys they picked above them or guys who they'll pick in the 11th through 20th rounds. Since those picks, you get 150,000 that doesn't count towards your
Yeah, that's the
pool.
max.
But the 11th and 12th rounds, usually you'll see some interesting guys pick. Like in the last 2 years, Josh Gross was an
Yes.
interesting I think he was a draft eligible sophomore that had some interesting attributes. He's
Yes,
turned out to be a
absolutely. You
solid.
nailed it.
Yeah, and Mac Estrada last year was a JUCO guy who I believe unfortunately is TJ right now, but they signed him for 625,000.
Yep.
So yes, some of it is probably money related, trying to get Gillespie and Hoyer and maybe some to Fox and obviously to Dax Kilby. But Grable, although he isn't as exciting as Estrada and Gross from years past, he's still a can dial up to 96. So there's something there. It's obviously no, not the most awe-inspiring pick, him or Camden Troyer, who was a senior outfielder they picked from Liberty. Neither of those guys are exciting, but Grable has some velocity that could make him an interesting pen arm, and
I,
Camden Troyer should be a
I
fine
mean, honestly,
outfielder.
I could say of picks between picks 11 to 12, I mean 20. The only one that I could somewhat see said that I seen is Lovich from Missouri, who
Hmm.
I believe was a 16th round pick. He's
Yeah.
got the size, he's got some pop in his bat, could also play first, can play short, and he could play third. I think, he is someone that I think they probably once he signed is in Tampa. And that's something that we should also mention. The hitters, Kent, um, the kid from Alabama, what's his name?
DiBartolo,
Yeah,
Bonamolo,
yeah.
Bonamolo. There
They're
we go.
Malamolo.
they will all, and I'm Italian, and I don't even can't even say the name. They're
Yeah.
all going to be probably be playing in another 3 weeks in low A in Tampa. So they'll get some early burn down there to see what they are, and and that goes for some. They did get an undrafted free agent today
Mhm.
from Arkansas,
Yeah, Justin, or not Justin Maxwell, but something
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that I
he
could see
he
them
had some
play,
good numbers.
see him play down there. But these picks like are all gambles between 11, especially this year compared to other years. I think they just
I wouldn't even
last
call them gambles. They're dart throws. You
yeah,
just hope one of them hits. I know
yep,
Ryan Ozinski. I'm just gonna quickly mention a couple guys. I don't think it's worth going all over
yeah,
all these next nine picks. We're probably don't a lot of these guys we don't really know that much about. But Ozinski, I know, has dialed it up to like 98, 99. He had no control at UVA, but that's a big velocity that maybe you get that to a point where it can at least be really a good reliever, or who knows, maybe it's a starter. I imagine not, but Hayden Morris, who was their JUCO pick in the 19th round, I don't know if they're gonna be able to sign him, but he's 6'8" behemoth. A lot of strikeouts at that level. Now that's a nice raw arm that they could probably, if they can get in, there's a lot to dream on there. In the 20th round, they took Mark Grudzielanik's son, Bryce Grudzielanik. He played at UCLA. Seemed that he has some decent power. I don't know if they're going to sign him, but it's a cool legacy pick. But yeah, no, a lot of these guys is you're talking about the guys who probably are going to end up being relievers, or they're going to be guys who are, depth position players. Maybe one of them, two of them pop like Brendan Jones or Dylan Lewis did from this most recent class, and Xavier Rivas so far. But, it's just really hard to say without, seeing them get on that field.
I have a theory, that when they do these drafts and they put their war room together
Mhm.
months beforehand, when they do a draft like this, it usually tells me what at the deadline what they're going to get rid of, right? Like what are they moving? So last year when they got all these arms, you could figure maybe arms will be moved, or
I'm going to dispute that because I feel like they got all those arms because they just got rid of a lot of arms. You look at that trade
yeah,
deadline, it was for the
yeah,
Jazz trade, it was three hitters they gave up.
that
Um,
that's what
so
yeah, I was about to say that, and
it's
then
more
they
it's more reactive than proactive.
yeah. I think, because you got to remember these guys are going to be replacing current players. So you have to also project you're either cutting them or you're trading them because they're going to need spots. You
Mhm.
just have a whole new class, and then the ones you sign are going to need. And now when the minor leagues are only really four levels, you're going to need to you need to find some spots. But I think when it comes to this deadline, I think it's probably going to be, and I've been saying this, like fringe players or guys who are going to be in the 40 man that you need to clear up so that you can move players up and you can move these guys in.
Well, let's stay on here this for a minute because this one, what are some of the names what are some of the names that are going to be on out there to be traded? Like, let's put some names out there, not just
Um,
just the Rule 5 guys or whatnot, but let's you don't have to make put the deal together, but
yeah,
really, who are the names that are most likely going to be traded,
yeah.
like a TJ Rumsfeld or
Y-
Yeah.
so,
I'm okay starting on this one. I think Bobby and I have had a little bit of a, maybe disagreement or different perspective on it on Twitter. But if Brian Cashman, what he's saying is true, and what the different the John Heymans are hearing about the Yankees, or teams expect the Yankees to have big trade deadline. I expect some real names are going to be picked. I said this, the rotation, the pitching depth is the strength of the system. The rotation, you have Cole. I know he's not going to be ready right away come, next season, but he'll probably be back by June, July. But you have Cole, Rodon, and Fried all locked up for 3+ seasons, um, starting in the 2026 season. And then you have, so that's three rotation spots. Then you have Heel, Warren, and Schlittler, who are all going to be pre-arb pitchers who one's rookie of the year, one's having a really nice rookie season. The other just had a great MLB debut. So that's six spots right there. And like, unless you're trading one of those, which I don't see why they would do for this trade deadline, given their starting pitching issues, I think you're looking at dealing from, I would not be shocked if we see one of Carlos Agrange, Bryce Cunningham, Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, and Ben Hess be traded. Those are your top four pitching prospects minus Camp Schlittler since he's already debuted. I really would not be surprised if we see one of those guys go. Um, it's just, I think if you're looking at other guys, Rafael Flores and Jesus Rodriguez, both catchers who, given Ben Rice being able to kind of catch, obviously Austin Wells has that starter spot unlock, and JC Escarras, and while you're rookie, both those guys seem like decent bets to be moved. TJ Rumfield, like was mentioned, as a Rule 5 eligible first baseman, a team who wants a pro-ready guy, he'll be able to do that. So I think those are like three guys that make a lot of sense to me right there. I also think Griffin Herring, like I said earlier, a guy went sixth rounder to, nice looking starting pitcher, a sixth rounder who was a reliever in college, I should say, to making a nice looking starting pitcher. I think he's a guy you could see dealt. Um, but yeah, I think those are the main areas I see. Brendan Beck's another one just because he's 26-year-old and almost pro ready. Um, I think he will be a name I would very very be not I would not be surprised to see him traded.
I think Aaron just took all my thunder because those are the same things I would say. I'm just going to go back, like, just very quickly. Like you just said over here, Beck, right? Brandon Beck.
Uh-huh.
We see him, being hurt and stuff. Cashman is probably in his trades talking about Mitch Spence, who has had a good year, 2 years now with the A's, and he was a Rule 5 guy. Not saying he's great, not saying he's fantastic, but he's putting up innings, right? And in MLB, you need to put up innings. So when he's making these trade talks, he's talking up a guy like that.
I
Um,
would be say even JP Sears, he was an older
yeah,
guy when he
absolutely,
debuted, and
absolutely.
he's, not a high velocity
Yep.
guy, but
Hmm.
he's made it work to be I mean, I would get maybe say below average starting pitcher, but he's a guy who's been solid and maybe would be optimized out of the bullpen. But
If you
yeah,
ask me, who I think the top tip, Rodriguez Cruz, because he's going to be on the put on the 40 man. Selvage has to be put on the 40 man.
mhm.
Lalani has to be put on the 40 man, right? So those are three guys right there that I could see them being offering in deals. TJ, JC Escar, I mean, Sherman said something yesterday, which I totally agree. You know, he's a lefty catcher who could frame good, even though he's 30 years old. You got him for 5 years of control. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I
it's
mean that was an issue with Cruz. He was, he's a 34-year-old with like 5 years of control. Like that's if you can catch teams. Kyle Higashioka still held value with the
yes,
Padres.
correct. And you see what the kid is doing in Boston. Navarre wasn't it? Narvaez, right?
Narvaez.
Navarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you know, what we see them is completely different than what he's probably offering them. So I think those are the guys, and I also think, like you mentioned, you know, uh, Rumfield, Rodriguez, Jorbit, Beater, Verling. Those are the names I would say. I would be surprised if you asked me who I don't think, you know, and I maybe Roderick Arias. You know, he's another one
I
who's
was just I was just about to add, I was just, honestly as you were going through these names, in my head I was going, I wonder would Roderick be there? And I
this
know
is
and
this is the thing, right? He's 20 years old. He was a number one across the board, right? And his shine has worn off, but he's 20 years old. Do they now cut bait with him, right? Do they now finally, you know, I don't want to say finally, it's not really the end of that, but do they sell him still being that number one lefty infielder, switch hitter? Like I said, lefty, a switch hitter who can play shortstop, and maybe he needs a change of scenery from this organization. So, like, if just for an example, I'm throwing up a hypothetical, I could see him offering him and Rodriguez Cruz for Suarez. I mean, that would be a fair deal. You're getting a top, you know, a pitcher who's been on fire this year, plus a kid who was a consensus top three international sign for an 8 week rental, right? That's what I would probably think that's the limit. I don't think Jones, I don't think Dominguez, I don't think the two pitchers from,
Dominguez will not be traded.
yeah, the two pitchers from excuse me, the two pitchers from last year, Hess, Cunningham. Uh, Laronde, unless it's for somebody with multiple years of control, that I cannot see,
Yeah.
right?
I just want to kind of, I'm going to dispute you a little bit. I don't see him being traded, and I'm going to talk about Spencer Jones in this regard with it because you're talking about, Spencer Jones last year, in Double A had all those struggles and struck out all those times and lost a lot of that value. He
Yeah.
fell out of the top 100 list and fell down, from our number two prospect to like I think he was around seven by a couple places. So I think, everyone was saying, "Oh, they're going to cut bait. They're going to cut bait." No, they didn't cut bait. They held their stock, and it's paid off big. Now, I mean, I don't want to. He's someone who, I guess we're going to see. Do they believe it's now's the time to sell high now that he's killing it, or do they actually think he has a future with the team? We're going to find out in a few weeks. I personally hope they keep him, but I bring that back to Arias. And also Milone, since you brought him up, even though his is more of an injury case. But I just don't see them wanting to just throw these guys in when they're, injured or playing poorly, when they're still so young and have so much value. I know Milone is Rule 5 eligible, but I would be very surprised if a team picked the guy who hasn't thrown a pitch above A minus to be on the MLB roster. That would be pretty insane. So I just can't see giving up on that value on two guys so young just because it hasn't worked out on them. It almost feels like to me that because of the value they could possess, it really does. And for where they are and they're both in Tampa still, it just makes so much more sense to me for it's either they work it out and you get all that great value back, or they flame out and it's just another guy who, looked like he could have something and just couldn't get it going for whatever reason. So I just don't find them to be trade pieces in my mind.
no, and go and especially with Roderick, you mentioned before he needs to change the scenery. Maybe is the change of scenery could be that he needs to be moved up to Hudson Valley or moved over to third base, especially, now they have Dax coming into the probability of Dax coming into the
Yeah.
system. should he, he's kind of went up, he was hitting that, he's been playing better as of recently. Should they kind of take this? Okay, he's done well enough. Now this is time to move him up. He spent a
Well,
year and a half now in Tampa.
if he's in the system come August the 1st, and Corey Jackson and Kent are around, somebody, either he's moving up or they're not playing shortstop. You know what I mean? So it's going to be some kind of situation. Um, I like I said, I just have a feeling that this draft, it's going to be players where the organization knows what they are and either are going to try to be ahead of the gun, or in some players, I mean, like just like I said, we talked about Beck, we talked about Ascar. I just see Cashman talking up players, and what is great around the game is that there are so many Yankee catchers around the game. There are Yankee pitchers around the game that are pitching well. I know the Red Sox had what's his name, Fitz, right?
Yeah.
And the other kid that got hurt a couple of years ago, and then like the A's got. So when you see that they're developing in the system, and let's be honest here, I don't see any major deal like that's going to blow. Like there's nobody on the deadline. I mean, if
There's
you,
not gonna be a Jazz.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. So I mean, whether it's Suarez or Ryan McMahon, whether it's Bader or another relief pitcher, whether it's Lugo, whether it's Kelly, you know, they're not a lot of value there. You know what I mean? So I don't expect what their trading is going to be significant. I mean, I'm not losing sleep that I don't think, and this is the other thing about Jones too, it's also how we've been told Jones is. So, you know, coming out of college, I remember the story about like he was the 1%. There's a great piece, I think, from an article, I think maybe from The Athletic. He was the 1% in running, hitting, fielding. And when they drafted him, I think everybody thought he was going to be in the major leagues in a year or so. And what people forget, he's coming off Tommy John surgery and he's coming off COVID, right? Where he's missing time. So it takes some time for him to have that in-game power. And now he's 24. If you think about it, Judge came to the major leagues, if I'm correct, at 25. I may be off, but I think
I think he,
Mhm.
he had the cup of coffee as
yeah,
24, but he was
and all
25 for
24.
the
yeah. And I
yeah.
think he got hurt or
I
Yeah,
don't know,
oblique.
but he,
Yeah,
yeah.
at the end of the first season
Okay.
that he got pulled up, he pulled his oblique.
His first full year, he was
mm,
at 25. I don't see what the path that Jones is right now is out of the question. I mean, that is not like he's too old or too, he's outdated, he's worn out his welcome. I think what they're going to keep him for the reason of we don't know what this winter shakes out, right? Because if Bellinger opts out and a team, you know how Boris is, money is there, and Grisham is gone, right? They might need, and if they're pursuing Tucker, doesn't mean that they're going to sign him. You're going to need that thing. So you have Dominguez, you have Jones, and you have Judge at least because let's be honest here. Pereira is another one who I think is going to be traded at this
I
deadline.
agree. I agree. I could see him being flipped. Him and TJ Rumfield are the most obvious. Give those guys to a team and get a reliever back. Give me Kyle Finnegan. You guys can
Yep,
have TJ Rumfield.
yep. And then and Aaron, you
Do
probably
you think about Grish? Oh, here's a random one. Do you think Grisham gets traded and they move Pereira
No,
up as the fourth outfielder?
no.
no,
I
but
think that they like having the
yeah,
depth. I know it drives some people crazy. Dominguez not getting played, even though I think I think that's been overblown. But I think having that depth and having a guy you can trust to hit a bomb and have a night clutch hit and play center field defense is a
I
nice
think
luxury.
the depth, and I think you're going to see him a lot in October, is whether we
Uh,
would, we don't, and whether he starts or he's later in games. But
yeah.
you're going to see him. But like you just mentioned, like those two guys are prime candidates. But what I was going to say is, outside of Pereira, who else do they have in the outfield? Brandon Jones. right? Would he be the next one in line down on the farm? Like, what kind of depth do they have in the farm and the outfield, right? So if you're trading Spencer Jones and you're trading Pereira, or you're not high on Pereira, let's put it that way. What is the next?
Jay Savina, Dylan Lewis, Brennan Davis. I don't even want to get into that. That's
Exactly.
just it's been
So
fun with Brennan Davis, but let's not like hitch any wagons to.
this is not hard to play. Now, if Austin Riley's available and they want Spencer Jones, little different story there, right? That's a different story. But the thought of trading him for a rental, um, I just
Hard to
don't
see.
see it because like you said, we've been saying, it was like what you got to plan ahead. There if you go into the Tampa offices, there is a board with all their names and the amount of control they have for those players, and it goes into their system. So, when you look at the depth chart for 2026, it's only showing right now Dominguez and Judge. That's the only guarantees, right? So
Mhm.
unless they're like the bag is going to Tucker and Dominguez is going to center field next year, which we don't know, but let's be realistic. Do you see $600 million being something that Hal Steinbrenner is thinking about? Especially when he's looking on the farm and he sees this kid hitting 21, 22 home runs in 58.
Yeah. No, I honestly, I think they'll make the deal for Bellinger, make a 5-year deal,
Yeah,
30 a year, and they can, and you know what, they can solve their problem. And he can wind up going to first base,
yeah.
but then that
I
causes
was
the next
saying that
problem of
this
where to
week.
play Ben Rice, and then that just steamrolls. The ball just rolls down the hill on so
I,
many
I
other things.
I will tell you what's going to be interesting. Then you just mentioned this, and this correlates a little bit. Is Rafael Flores, right? Like, what do they think of him? Because for me, I think the power potential of 20 plus home runs at catcher, first base, and DH is something that's nice next year because they need that right-handed bat. Jesus Rodriguez doesn't have that pop. I could see Rodriguez being traded before Flores, but if in the right deal, do you say no to Flores? Again, this is the thing. Look around the league. Power is at a premium. It's not 2018, 2019. Balls are not flying. So right now, and the other one too is like trade Rock Regio. Who cares, right? There are three guys, Regio, and I mentioned this the last time, Regio, Flores, and Jones. All of them could have 20, 25 plus home runs. I can't think of the last time the Yankees minor league system had three guys with 25 plus home runs. Must be a while. And that's not including guys like Lewis or Pereira, who stays in the system this year, who both could hit over 20 home runs. But those three, you just don't trade them. If other teams want that, it's because they recognize the power potential and knowing that it's a premium.
All right. So speaking of trade deadline coming up, that's a lot of times when after this deadline you'll see a lot of movement with the players moving up in the organization, some moving down, obviously. Um, starting in Tampa, actually. Let's go from Tampa up to Somerset, because after that it's AAA. You're moving up to the big leagues. What are some of the guys that you'd like to see graduate from each level? So starting in Tampa.
I mean, I would like to see Gage Zeal get moved up. I know his last few starts haven't been the best, but I think he's a pretty advanced pitcher with an advanced repertoire and control. I like to see him get challenged in the in Hudson Valley more. And I think that Brian Sanchez has, some flashy stuff. He has some good doubles power. And I would like to, he's 21. Another guy I'd like to see get challenged that's had a pretty solid season.
I mean, like, what are they going to do with Arias? I mean, that would be the really the only answer. Besides that, I mean, it's really what they think. He's the one from. I mean, right now, I think the quality is kind of weak in Tampa. It's not like it's been. before when it had a lot of talent. But Roderick, I would like to see if he's with them. Does he go up to Hudson Valley after the deadline?
Oh, yeah, that's the guy I'm hoping that. I'm hoping he stays with the organization. Two, he gets to move up to Hudson Valley. I think sometimes it's just kind of one of those things where you need that change of scenery. That you've been in Tampa for not just figure this. It's not just that he's been in Tampa for with the Tarpons for a year and a half, but he was also there the year before then in the FCL. So he's been there for 2.5 years. So maybe he's getting a little stale. He needs a new challenge. It could reinvigorate him. Might be able to push his stock up higher, especially for the offseason next year as well. If they decide, hey,
Yeah.
this is not the time to trade him, maybe in the offseason to get a bigger fish, they have to dangle him out there at that point. So
Definitely could be.
with that, yeah. So with that said, then moving on to Hudson Valley, who are some of the guys you think should be moving up from Hudson Valley to Double A?
I think depending if he's still healthy, Griffin Herring, but that's if he's with the team. I mean, like if they don't trade him, that's something that I could see them moving him up. But there's also an inning limit on him because they got to be careful
Those
now. Like I
reliever,
said,
yeah.
yeah, they know more than I do, um, in terms of that. And I think that somebody the Hess. Right, and Cunningham, they're both been on and off in terms of being hurt, so I don't know what their goal is when it comes to those guys. But as if Herring is healthy, I could see that. I mean, he still has one of the lowest ERAs in all of minor league baseball, so and he seems to be doing it there.
Yeah, I mean all those guys, Herring, Cunningham, Hess, I guess ERC just got called up. I'm not high on Kyle Carr. I've been pretty down on him this year, even though his ERA has been good. I just some of the stuff and how he's been getting it done hasn't impressed me. But at this point, I would like to see him just not. I don't want him to get called because I think he's been this great pitcher, but more I want to see what happens if he goes up and if he can hang. I'm not sold on him as a starter right now, but I think, he's been in Hudson Valley long enough, kind of the same, he's kind of similar situation to Roderick. Maybe not as, because Roderick's, I think, had deeper struggles, but Kyle Carr would be nice to see get to Double A and just, really test him out.
All right, then let's finish this off. Who from Double A would you like to see make the step up to Triple A? Uh, knowing that Double A is probably where the best of the
Let me
best
just
are
say
right now.
honestly, nobody.
Yeah.
Just keep them there.
Yeah,
Seriously,
Um,
keep them there because
yeah.
to be honest, I mean Ben Shields. I mean Ben Shields should be up.
Yeah, Ben Shields makes sense.
Ben Shields, I think, needs to be up there. I think Aaron, you probably would know more than me. Isn't Somerset making the playoffs or they're close? How's their?
I mean, they didn't win. They won't for the first. I know all the organizations are like really hot to start the
Yeah.
second half, but none of them qualified for the first half.
Okay.
So,
I
but I
mean,
know, we'll see. It's early in
I,
the second half of the season.
I could see Reggio maybe.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, you could say
Maybe.
Reggio, you could say Hasso. I
Yeah.
mean, all the guys really that interest me in Double A, I either like started the season there and have been good, but I don't want to like push them. Maybe like Hasso at the end of the season. Give him the after the Somerset season ends, those like extra week or two that Triple A plays. I think Ben Shields just because of his age, let me see him versus Triple A hitters. Um, and just because I think he is a pretty high floor guy, I wouldn't mind seeing Brendan Jones get the call. He's been on fire the last couple weeks. So, let's see where he is by the end of August and maybe give him a couple weeks in September. But yeah, it's not a level I'm really seeing dying for anyone to get to right now from Double A.
And to be honest, even with Shields, that's if he's still with the organization after the trade
Yeah,
deadline.
it's the big
yeah. I was gonna. That's the big question mark over
Because
a
to
lot of
be
guys.
honest with you, I think Beck and Shields are two guys that I think Cash is probably pushing heavy in deals, and with the right team, they know that. Let's be honest over here. I mean, both of those two guys are in a team or with like the A's, or I don't want to say the Rockies.
Pittsburgh,
The
maybe.
Rock. What's that?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Cashman
Yeah,
likes him.
absolutely.
Cashman loves making deals with them.
Pittsburgh's a great, I mean, a place where the weather is not crazy, right? Or the altitude is high. Uh, a place like Pittsburgh. I mean, Beck and Shields are going to get burned there. They're going to play there, and they're probably going to be um, capable major league pitchers. Whether they have long careers or not, it doesn't matter if they're just, they're doing their job right now. That's something. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's, packaging two of them and the return, even with the Scara, those three guys are, if you package a Scara and those two guys in a trade, their value might be low to us. But to a major league team, those three guys are going in and playing like August the 1st. Let's be honest. So if you traded them, just hypothetically, you traded them to, like you said, the Pirates, and you brought back, Connor Falefa as just a bench bat, right? And you brought back, David, what's his name, Bednar.
Bender.
Yeah, for this year and next year, those three, Pittsburgh is playing those guys. I mean, look at their arms and stuff. Beck could probably is pitching the major league level. Shields could pitch the major league level, and Ascara playing truly 50% of the time is going to be a nice player. So that's
Yeah, I wouldn't say pitching is exactly what Pittsburgh needs, but I think your overall message is spot on there.
yeah. I mean, yeah, generic team. Who has
Yeah.
rookie pitchers. You know what I mean? That's the thing. I think and I say this all the time, there's never been a time where I said that Cashman is overpaid on it for a player, and whether that player like last year, the Jazz trade, it was light, it seemed light to begin with, he paid for Frankie Montas. I'm not gonna lie there. I mean, that was a pretty fair deal. Gallo trade when it happened, I thought that was a light deal.
That was just four decent guys,
Yeah.
no really good
Hmm.
guys. Obviously,
Absolutely.
Josh Smith has turned out well, but
Good for him.
yeah,
But that's what was that. But those are the three big deals if you look at it in the past. When he traded when Rizzo, I think Rizzo was a rental, right? When he
yeah.
traded, he
Rizzo for
traded,
Yeah,
Alcantara and Vizcaino.
and okay, so I now hear me out over here. When he traded for, I think who he traded, Katera.
Alcantara, yeah.
Yeah.
Alcantara.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me that he's shopping Pereira, and I don't know if it you that I was talking to yesterday that he was in the top 100. Was
Yeah,
that
yeah, we were talking about
yeah
that. Yeah.
in
I mean that's
23 in
I mean
24
that's different, but I get what you're saying.
yeah he's still 24 years old. He was a top international player. That's how he's selling it. Whether
Mhm.
whether somebody bites is a different story. You know what I mean? But if you could trade, like I think you mentioned it just before, you trade him for a relief pitcher or some, and I'm sure there's going to be one to be getting out there. So, to say that we're going to see something earth-shattering, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know that third baseman exists. That's what I say you hear all the time. You got to get the third base. Who's that third baseman? There's no third baseman out there that exists that is young,
Mhm.
controllable, and righty. Is what it
You
is.
could take a flyer, take the rest of the 1 year deal for Millone Moncada, not have to give up a whole lot.
Yeah, that's a
Switch
rental
hitter.
though. It's yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's a rental, but you're
Yeah.
right. There's no long term solution right now.
No. Yeah.
No, I think you're gonna see some rentals, and maybe some relief pitchers with control because you got to remember the pen is going to be pretty much empty even next year because you have two potential free agents. Like one thing I can guarantee you, the relief pitchers that he trades for the most part, will
Gonna
have
have
control.
control.
Yeah, have to. Like the
Yeah.
logistics is you're losing Weaver, Williams, and you got hurt players and stuff. So you know, it would.
There's gonna be two very just out of nowhere relief pitcher trades of guys
Yes,
probably like 5 ERAs for the team they're on now
could
that
be.
have some nice stuff. Like that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and as long as they have control, because they'll have some time. But my trade deadline is probably going to be a third baseman, three relief pitchers, and I think the starting pitcher will determine how the market is. because of the market is there's arms and teams are dumping. Like let's just say like you look at the two from Arizona. There's Seth Lugo. There's only so many teams that are going to be willing to buy. You know what I mean? So let's see what's out there. But I don't think the starting pitcher will be the priority as much as the relief pitchers are.
Yeah.
Definitely, and a third baseman.
The only relief pitcher who I think they'd actually pay a big price for is John Duran, just because I know
Yeah.
they've been very interested in him before, and they were interested in Willie Castro. But yeah, that's the only relief pitcher I'd see them paying a big price for. But yeah, no, it should be an interesting time, and I think there's a lot of guys who it'll be interesting to see if they're with the team. A lot of guys I like, a lot of guys I think I would be happy to move on from now. But no, it'll be interesting 2 weeks to see what deals are made.
Usually at the trade deadline, there's somebody that I have a favor with. To be honest with you, I don't really even care. There's nothing out there. Like if they got Suarez or McMahon or it doesn't really or Hayes,
Yeah.
it does not.
So it's a weird deadline this year,
Mhm.
even for the fact that the deadline's been weird since the playoff expansion.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thank you, Bobby, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
long
Thank
one.
you.
Long one. I hope you guys listen and enjoy it. Definitely covered a lot there.
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
thank you
Uh,
guys so very much.
Yes, thank you.
no, thank you. And for Carlos who couldn't make it, thank you. This is Mark for Yankees Farm signing off.
Thank you. Good night.